What is up, guys? It's your coach, JT Tapias, and today we're going to speak about how to commit to weight loss, that big word commitment that so many of us have such a negative connotation to. Today we're going to make it simple, and I want to start off with a story of a guy I met many years ago in Spain while I was living out there. And it was interesting. He was probably in his 60s, and he and I hit it off, and we used to grab coffee. And one of the things that really impacted me about this guy was that he was a committed person. He went to work for 32 years without skipping one day, not one sick day. He went to work for 32 years nonstop, right? He would go to work Monday through Saturday. His only day off was Sunday, and he did that for 32 years of his life. He had, I don't know how many awards when he actually retired, and his boss basically gave him actions in the company because he felt as if it weren't for him, he wouldn't have been able to build the business that he built. And it was just outstanding to see the level of commitment. And so, of course, I love blueprints. And so I would sit with him and I would ask him, what compelled you to really just move forward and go to work for 32 years? Because, man, I mean, I'm pretty consistent, but I don't know that I've ever gone to a specific place for an entire year in a row. There's always something that comes up. Someone gets sick, some incident, situation happens where you have to, for some reason not show up. And this guy went to work for 32 years. And this is exactly what he said. He said that every single idea, every endeavor starts off with three great phases. He says there's three great phases to any idea, any endeavor. And he said, when I first started in the company, he said, I wanted to be excellent. I wanted to give my best. I wanted to be the best employee there. And he said, I just wanted to do well. And so he said, that was my goal. That was the idea. I wanted to shine. And he says, it wasn't out of pride or wanting to be better than my coworkers. He said, I just really wanted to excel because I was so motivated by this opportunity. So he said, number one, when you first go into an endeavor, an idea, and when he first went into this business that he went into, he says phase number one is uninformed optimism. He says this is the excitement when you're oblivious to everything that's coming your way, the responsibilities. There's a lack of understanding behind what it actually takes to make this thing happen, right? You're excited. This is very similar to the romance phase in a relationship where everything about the person is great. Everyone has their representative on, and nothing can go wrong, right? They ask you then and there, what could ever go wrong in this relationship? You're like, oh, nothing. We're perfect for each other. This is sort of the romance phase, and it's called the uninformed optimism. And he said, I went into it with all this optimism. He said, and a couple months in, he said, I hit phase two. He said, I hit the valley of despair right around month 7 or 8. Where he says, I lost hope. He says, it was hard. I was learning a lot of things. I was being pushed outside of my comfort zone. I had my manager that was constantly barking orders at me. It seemed as if nothing I did was good enough. And he said, I just, I got really depressed. He said, and I considered giving up. He said, I started to, 8 hours, 9 hours a day at work. I was just planning my escape and how I was going to move into my next career and my next thing. And I want to make a short pause here because this is very similar to the journey of weight loss. People start off excited. As soon as they encounter a little bit of friction, right, that's when they start to plan their escape. They get depressed. They think, oh, this is not for me. I'm never going to be able to do this. And so this is why I'm bringing this story to you guys, because there's a lot of parallels here, right? So just bear with me. So he went through the valley of despair. He said, but I pushed through. He said, I didn't give up. He said, I just kept showing up. He says, I mastered the trait of showing up. I just showed up every day. I didn't ask my emotions how I felt. I just showed up. And he said something really interesting happened right around a month and a half, 2 months after the valley of despair. He says, I went into phase 3, which is informed optimism. He said, I got through that threshold. I just simply stopped asking my emotions how I felt, and I just showed up every day, and I committed to the process. And he said, and I just went through the motions, right? He says, I wasn't asking myself how I was feeling, if I was comfortable, if I was happy. He said, I'm just gonna show up. I'm gonna show up, and he says, I'm gonna take it a day at a time. I'm gonna give it my best effort. And he says, if after giving my best effort, it doesn't work, then I can just quit, and I won't have any regrets because I know I gave it my all. And so he just kept showing up. And so he encountered phase 3, which is informed optimism. He says, at that point, I knew exactly what it took to actually be the best employee, to excel at work, to actually really, really learn my trait well. He says, I knew well what needed to happen. And he says, I just put my head down and I said, I'm going to commit to this process and I'm not going to give up. And he said, at that point, he was committed mentally. He knew what it took. He was committed emotionally. He knew that he had to make this happen. And here's the interesting part. And I'm going to hold it to the end because this is really where the rubber meets the road. Emotionally connected because there was a very strong why pushing him in the direction of not giving up. And I'll hold that for the end just so that I can keep your attention here. And he said, and then I was just committed spiritually. He says, my morals, my principles, everything about my fiber just wanted to stay and do well and excel and just watch me turn a leaf basically, because he says, I was so out of it. He said, but I really didn't have a lot of options and I knew this was a great company and I just wanted to stick with it. So he stuck with it. And in phase 3, he says he was committed mentally, emotionally, spiritually. And he said at this point he was too invested, right? He had invested his entire education to go into this job. But more importantly, he understood all 3 of those phases. He got through them. And he said when he got to phase 3, that sort of friction moved away. He wasn't as upset anymore. He said he started to do better. He started to get really good at what he was doing. He started to get complimented. He started to get raises. His boss was acknowledging him more. He started to take responsibility and overlook a lot of the other operations inside of the company. And he said that sense of belonging really, really was the thing that got me all the way to phase 3 and allowed me to stay persistent. He said, more importantly, number one, understanding the phases of where you are is important in order to stay committed, right? He says, mastering the art of showing up every single day and not asking your emotions how you feel or do you feel good or are you happy, simply mastering the art of showing up every day. And he said, more importantly, he said, I attached all of this friction, all of this adversity to a very strong emotional why. Here's what I was holding last for you. The last little bit of information I'm holding here for you. The thing that brought him through phase 1, which was uninformed optimism, the excitement, the valley of despair, phase 2, and then phase 3, informed optimism, was that he had lost his wife to cancer and he had 2 little girls that he was looking after. And he understood really, really well that he needed to provide a good living for them. He was the provider, he was the breadwinner. He couldn't give up, right? And this is the thing that pushed him through. And he said, I managed to actually stay committed because every single time I wanted to quit, I would think of my little girls and how they were going to suffer and what I was going to put them through if I actually gave up on this particular job. He says, and I'm glad that I didn't give up. He says, I was persistent and committed for 32 years. And he says on the other side of that, he says the immense amount of principles and morals and grit that I learned from persisting through all 3 of those phases, he says, I can't even articulate. So I'm here to say this: if you have a hard time with commitment, understand that if you're taking on a journey, right? You are looking to lose weight, you are looking to commit to a relationship, to a career. You're going to go through 3 phases. You're going to go through that phase of informed optimism. You're going to go through the valley of despair. You're going to get to phase 3. Hopefully, if you stick through it, if that why is strong enough of that informed optimism. And when you get there, my friend, nothing will rock you, nothing will move you. And if you persist, you're going to be successful. In this particular realm, which is the realm of fitness and proper nutrition, if you're truly looking to commit to a weight loss plan, understand that there are going to be some fluctuations in your decision. You're going to waver when you encounter friction. You're going to want to give up, right? But if you stick through it because prior to getting started, you find a strong emotional why, that thing that is unmovable, that is so connected to your mind, to your emotions, to your spirit, right? Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's your kids, maybe it's your spouse, maybe you want to leave a legacy of health and wellness behind. And maybe you just want to prove some people wrong, right? Maybe there's been some friction there. Maybe there's some people that don't believe that you can ever lose this weight, or that you've already done all the diets and, oh yeah, he's on another diet, he's never going to get it done. Maybe you're there and you're just going to use some of that negative emotion to move forward. Whatever it takes, find a strong emotional why, move forward, understand that there's phases of this process, and those phases are not there to break you. Those phases are there to keep you strong and keep you committed. And on the other side, it's not just about hitting the goal, losing the weight, decreasing the body fat percentages, is actually the person that you actually become on the way to your goal that has actually more value than reaching that goal. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you enjoyed this video, you're absolutely going to love this video here. Check it out. I hope you enjoyed it. How to commit to weight loss in a very practical way. Leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. JT Tapias with the Empty Your Bucket Nutrition Plan channel. I'll talk to you guys soon. Ciao, ciao.